I never imagined that a girl in bare feet would leave a millionaire CEO in tears. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. My heart was racing. I stood there, toes curling against the cold marble floor, my whole body trembling. The crowd was thick, whispers swirling around like a storm. It felt like the air crackled with electricity. All eyes were on him. Daniel Vandermeer, the brilliant CEO, so polished, so powerful, looked utterly shattered. His usually sharp blue eyes were glassy, glistening with unshed tears. I had seen him dominate board meetings, crush competitors, but now, he was a man stripped bare. What was a girl like me doing in a place like this? I still didn't know. I was just here to pick up a friend. Yet, the energy pulled me in, inching closer, caught in the whirlwind of tension and confusion that he was pacing back and forth like a caged animal. The crisp suit he wore did nothing to mask his disarray. His hands trembled, clenching and unclenching, like he was battling demons only he could see. And I was just a girl, lost in a sea of high-powered entrepreneurs. I could hear their murmurs, a blend of shock and disbelief. What could possibly break him? Someone breathed. Not him, the gala was alive with laughter. But here, it was deathly quiet. Everything felt heavy, expectant. Then, I dared to step forward. I didn't know what I was doing. I barely knew him, but something inside me pulled me closer. My bare feet patted softly on the floor, and just as I reached him, his gaze snapped toward me. Surprise flickered through his expression, swiftly followed by a depth of sorrow that pulled at my soul. "Who are you?" he rasped, his voice hoarse like gravel. I licked my lips, caught off guard by his raw vulnerability. I could see his facade cracking, revealing a man who was achingly human. "I'm just a friend," I managed, feeling a spark of courage. His pain was palpable, ricocheting around the room, and instead of looking away, I locked eyes with him. In that moment, everything else faded. I could sense the weight of lives intertwined, secrets between us, begging to be uncovered, but then, someone shouted from behind. "Get yourself together, Vandermeer." The words echoed, slicing through the silence, a harsh reminder of the stark world outside this moment. His pain morphed into anger, but as quickly as it came, it dissolved back into despair. He looked at me again. A heartbeat passed. "Who does it?" he muttered, broken. Still, I didn't understand. "Who walks away?" Confusion rippled through me. The crowd remained silent, waiting for his reaction, judging, questioning. But I felt that he needed more than just a push back into the corporate world. He needed something. But what? I took a breath, summoning every ounce of bravery within me. "Someone who realizes they're worth more than the weight they carry," I whispered, even though I wasn't sure if I believed it. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just about him. It was about me, too. We were both on the edge, staring into the abyss, desperate for a handhold. And as the silence deepened, I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever happened next would change everything. And in that dimly lit room, two strangers stood at a precipice of their own, each hiding wounds far deeper than what could be seen. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The silence lingered between us, a fragile thread that felt both electric and heavy. I was still grappling with the gravity of the moment, wondering if my words had truly reached him or if they had been lost to the air, never to find purchase. Daniel's sadness hung around him like a cloak, and I was terrified to disturb the fragile truce that had formed in the space between us. Suddenly, someone in the crowd stepped forward, a sharp angle to their stance and an impatient gleam in their eye. It was Emily, Daniel's right-hand woman, the one who always seemed to have her life curated perfectly. Her color-coordinated suit stood in stark contrast to my bare feet and casual dress, but it wasn't just the clothes that spoke of differences, it was how their confidence clashed with my uncertainty. "Daniel," she called, her voice slicing through the air like a knife, "this isn't the time for emotional breakdowns. We have a gala to run." The sharpness of her tone made my insides churn. Part of me wanted to defend him, to shout at her for being so cruel in the face of his pain. But deep down, I knew a battle was brewing. Here was a man weighing what it meant to be human against a world that demanded perfection. "Did you even bother to try to understand what he's going through?" I gasped, the fury and defiance surprising me. The crowd turned, taken aback by my outburst. Daniel's gaze flickered with something. "Could it be gratitude, please?" he murmured, almost inaudibly, as if he might melt into this moment forever if he could. Emily scoffed, shooting me a pointed glare that threatened to cut me down. "You don't know what you're talking about," she said, dismissing me with a wave. The crowd diverged, magnetized by tension. But I could see the vulnerability in Daniel, the way he seemed to unravel more with every second she spoke. As she continued her tirade, I stepped closer to him, drawn by that primal instinct to protect, to comfort. "I know you're hurting," I said softly, my voice carrying in the charged atmosphere. "You don't have to hide that." He tore his gaze from the scornful woman and locked it onto mine, those deep blue pools swirling with unspoken stories. "You think I have a choice?" he said bitterly. "I built this empire, yet it can crumble in an instant. What happens when I can't hold it together anymore?" My heart twisted in my chest, realizing how crippling the pressure must weigh on him. "Then let it crumble," I urged, recklessly. "Let it fall apart if it means you can finally breathe. You deserve to feel what?" He interrupted, frustration lining his tone. "How can I allow myself to feel anything when every emotion leads to weakness? Weakness leads to failure. And failure means I lose everything that I allowed myself to absorb." His turmoil. Every word dripped with a frantic desperation, the kind that echoed my own fears. Hadn't I felt similarly when faced with my own choices, when life seemed to loom relentlessly ahead? "Maybe," I offered carefully, "but don't you see? It's in that vulnerability that you might find strength." The murmurs around us faded once more, and I could almost feel the crowd leaning in, not just to witness but to absorb the rawness of this very moment. Instead of retreating, Daniel stared deeper into my eyes, as if he were searching for something he had long lost. "You're so sure of yourself," he whispered, an undeniable ache beneath his facade. "That I am not," I confessed, a lump forming in my throat. "I'm lost too. I came here thinking I'd pick up my friend and leave, but just as I thought I could reach him, two security personnel appeared, their bulk imposing as they moved closer, disruptive against the tender atmosphere. "Mr. Vandermeer," one of them said brusquely, "we need to escort you away." "This isn't the time or place," panic surged within me. "No," I called out, stepping closer, determined to stand my ground. "He needs time." "Time isn't on his side," Emily interjected, her impatience simmering. "He needs to deal with this." The hardness in her tone felt stinging, like being thrown back into the reality of a world that demanded order over compassion, but in that chaotic moment, something unexpected happened. Daniel reached out for my hand, his fingers brushing against mine, a silent anchor and a weighty promise that maybe we were both more connected than we realized. A little girl, a stranger, suddenly stepped from the shadows, her big eyes wide as she surveyed the scene. "Mr." she called out, voice filled with youthful innocence, piercing the tension. "Why are you sad?" The room went silent again, even Emily looked taken aback. Daniel's expression shifted. His face softened as he turned to the girl, almost like a flower unfurling under the sun. "Because sometimes, grown-ups," he began softly, a faraway look washing over his features, "feel too many things at once." The little girl nodded sagely, her small hand reaching out toward Daniel. "You can share, you know. My mommy says sharing helps." Each syllable filled the room like an unexpected bomb. The gathering was now entirely captivated, hushed. Time stood still as I noticed a flicker of something more in Daniel's eyes. Maybe it was hope. For the first time since he had entered the room, I could see the smallest hint of a smile at the corners of his mouth, but before I could push forward, capturing that moment of revelation, the security team stepped in again. "We'll need to continue this discussion elsewhere, Mr. Vandermeer, wait," I exclaimed, adrenaline surging through me again. Daniel held on to my gaze, the tiny spark of hope flickering between us like the leanest of flames about to catch. "You don't have to go," I breathed, my heart racing. And then, in a flash, he was gone. The gravity of the moment crashed like tidal waves, and my hope faded as quickly as it had ignited. The little girl stood still, looking up at me, clearly seeking clarity in our confusion. The crowd began to disperse, murmurs of speculation igniting once more. As I clutched the warmth of his touch, a new worry settled in my chest. What would we each sacrifice in order to rise from the ashes of this turmoil? And more importantly, would I ever see him again, or had the moment slipped like sand through my fingers forever lost? I watched as the crowd began to disperse, their hurried conversations turning the charged air into something almost hushed now. My heart felt heavy, anchored in place by the absence of Daniel. The warmth of his fleeting touch lingered on my skin, yet as the little girl's innocent question hung in the air, I grappled with the weight of unanswered thoughts. "Excuse me." I crouched down to her level, grateful for the distraction but still enveloped in confusion. "What's your name, Lily?" she said with a bright smile that belied the tension moments ago. Her curly hair framed a tiny face that seemed to hold all the wisdom of the world in its innocence. "Why were you and that man sad? Sometimes grown-ups have hard feelings," I replied, the words feeling both clumsy and profound. "But it's okay to feel, isn't it?" She tilted her head, pondering, then nodded. "My daddy says feelings are like waves. They come and go." I smiled at her unexpected depth, feeling a bond form in this strange moment. "Yes, just like waves. Sometimes they crash hard, and other times they're gentle. Do you feel sad, too?" she asked, her eyes wide and sincere. I hesitated, unsure how much to share with this little stranger who seemed to carry a light I desperately needed. "A little, yes. But you know what? I think talking about sadness makes it lighter, don't you?" Lily grinned, and the world around me brightened, if only slightly. "Like when I tell my mommy I'm scared after a storm. She hugs me until I'm not scared anymore." A sudden laughter bubbled inside me, filling the cracks of fear that had formed just moments before. "Exactly, sweetheart. Then maybe you just need to hug the man," she declared with unexpected certainty. I chuckled, but it was laced with a bittersweet ache. "I wish it were that easy, Lily." I glanced toward where Daniel had vanished, torn between the weight of reality and this tiny glimpse of hope. "Are you friends?" she asked, as if she read the swirling emotions in my heart. "Not exactly," I admitted. "But I wish we could be. Sometimes friends help one another feel better on hard days." "Then you should go find him," she urged. "People need friends when they're sad." As she spoke, I felt an overwhelming wave of determination wash over me. Perhaps Lily was right. I couldn't just stand idly by when something in me resonated like a beacon, calling for action. "Where did he go?" I asked her, rising to my feet with new purpose. "Through those doors." She pointed, her tiny finger indicating the exit where Daniel had been led away. "Thank you, Lily," I whispered, reaching down and gently squeezing her hand. "I'll try to be brave. You keep being amazing, okay, okay." She beamed, satisfaction sparkling in her eyes as she skipped away, leaving me with nothing but urgency and hope. That I rushed towards the doors, the hustle outside pulling me into the chaotic world I had briefly escaped. The breeze struck me, refreshing but cold as I squinted against the growing dusk. "Daniel!" I called, my voice slicing through the hum of distant conversations and laughter. "Daniel, where are you?" The crowd had thinned now, and I caught sight of Daniel's tall figure standing alone, partially obscured by the wall outside. He faced away from me, shoulders tense, the shadows wrapping around him. Daniel. I pressed on, crossing the last few steps between uncertainty and hope. He turned slowly, his eyes meeting mine with a mixture of surprise and something raw, almost vulnerable. You shouldn't be here," he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. "I had to find you," I said, breathless. "Lily said that people need friends when they're sad." His gaze faltered, cracking like a fragile glass surface. For a moment, his expression shifted, caught between wanting to push me away and pulling me closer. "I can't let you get dragged into this mess. You don't know what you're getting into, but I want to help you," I insisted, stepping closer. "You deserve to feel, Daniel. You deserve to be happy." "Happy?" He let out a harsh laugh that sounded like a plea for understanding. "How can I be happy when everything I've worked for could fall apart tomorrow? It's not about me anymore, it's about everyone who depends on this." "Then let them help you," I pleaded, desperation creeping in around my resolve. "You don't have to carry this alone. You can share your burdens, it's okay." He shook his head, terror dancing across his features, and in a panicked gesture, he took a step back. "You don't understand the stakes. If I fail, then you'll figure it out together. You have people who care about you, Daniel, who want to stand by your side." Before I could say more, his phone buzzed unrelentingly in his pocket, pulling him from our intimate connection. He flinched, the moment trembling as he pulled out his phone with a look of dread. "Damn it," he cursed under his breath, eyes flitting with something darker. "I have to take this." "No, wait." I reached for him, but he stepped back again, hesitation flickering across his features. He answered the call, and as he spoke, I felt an involuntary chill creep down my spine. His expressions shifted rapidly from worry to outright fear. "What do you mean, the investors are pulling out?" "No, not now." My heart dropped at the sudden shift in his demeanor. In just a fleeting moment, the reality of all that hung over him crashed into me. He was on the precipice, and the ground beneath him was crumbling. "Daniel," I murmured, taking one step forward, desperate to reach him again, but he raised a hand, his eyes stormy. "I'll call you back," he said sternly before abruptly ending the call. The silence that followed was laden with unsaid words, emotions caught like a breath held too long. "What's happening?" I whispered, apprehensive and deeply afraid for him. But before he could answer, his phone buzzed again, this time screen lit with a name that made my heart sink, Emily. He hesitated, staring at the phone like it was a bomb set to detonate at any moment. "What if she knows?" he muttered to himself, the depth of fear layering each word. "What if she's Daniel?" I cut him off, the urgency in my voice softened by concern. "You need to talk to me. Let me in on this. You don't have to face it alone." His gaze shifted from the phone to me, conflict raging behind his eyes. I could see a furious storm brewing, a dangerous mixture of resolution and despair threatening to spill over. I took a deep breath, the fear of what lay ahead feeling like a choking grip around my chest. "Whatever it is, well, face it together." In that moment, I thought I'd seen clarity in his eyes, a glimmer of acceptance that maybe sharing his burdens wasn't a sign of weakness, but courage. But as the phone buzzed once more, the unsettling edge of reality reasserted itself, shoving that thought away. And just like that, clarity shattered. His expression hardened, and he took a step back, that emotional wall slamming back into place. "You don't know what you're asking of me," he said quietly. The cold rush of fear pounded in my ears, and for a split second, I felt like I was losing him all over again. "Daniel." "Don't." I reached for him, but he faltered, caught between the need to shield himself and a burgeoning desire to lean on me. "Maybe," he said, eyes tormented, "sometimes it's easier to carry the weight alone." And with that, my heart sank deeper than I could express. Our chance flickered and dimmed like the dying light of a candle, leaving me grasping for answers as uncertainty loomed large. The storm had come, and I felt it coming for him with unyielding force. "Please, don't shut me out," I whispered, feeling the balance of everything I felt sway precariously. The next moment, Daniel turned away, phone in hand, teetering on the edge of a precipice that we both knew could change everything. And then he was gone, swallowed by the gathering darkness, leaving me standing alone, confronting an uncertain world that mirrored the tumult in my chest. Would I ever reach him again, or had I lost him amidst this chaos, the echoes of our last hopeful breath swallowed by the night? The air hung heavy as darkness settled in, wrapping around me like a suffocating shroud. I stood there, heart racing, caught in the aftermath of unspoken words and unfulfilled promises. I wanted to scream, to shake the reality of his retreat into something less painful, but it felt futile. Instead, I took a step back, allowing the night to cradle my confusion while the noises of the world faded to a distant hum. That I pulled out my phone, considering calling a friend, someone who could tether me back to sanity, but the thought of sharing my turmoil felt as daunting as scaling a mountain. Daniel's shadow replayed in my mind, the flicker of vulnerability in his eyes before he shut me out. But as I turned to walk away, I felt something pull at the edges of my resolve. Lily's words echoed in my thoughts: people need friends when they're sad. I couldn't just let him go, not when he was teetering on the edge of despair. I felt a surge of determination swell within me, heart pounding with a singular focus. I needed to understand what he was facing, even if it meant risking my own heart. With a quickened pace, I made my way back through the gathering shadows, weaving between scattered groups of people who still lingered, sharing muted laughter and teasing banter. Each step I took felt like a rebellion against the weight of despair Daniel had exuded. I needed to find out what was going on with him, even if it meant confronting uncomfortable truths. I fished in my pocket for the crumpled note I had saved from my earlier conversation with Daniel, something unremarkable that I hoped might spark a larger thread of connection. His name scribbled on the back of a receipt became my mantra as I retraced my steps, headed toward his apartment building, a familiar but now daunting structure looming ahead. Arriving at his door, my hand trembled, fingers hovering above the doorbell as the enormity of what I was about to do sank in, causing a shiver to course through me. Would he even open the door? Would he see me as a friend or an intruder? With a deep breath, I pressed the button. The chime echoing through the quiet waiting felt like an eternity. Seconds morphed into minutes until I finally heard the sound of footsteps approaching, my heart racing in anticipation and fear. The door creaked open, revealing Daniel, his expression a medley of surprise and cautious hope. "You came back," he said, and I couldn't tell if it was a statement or a question. "That I couldn't stay away," I replied, the weight of his turmoil crashing down on me anew as I took a step inside his dimly lit apartment. Just before the door swung fully open, I caught a glimpse of a figure in the shadows behind him, an older woman whose expressions held an unguarded intensity. My breath caught. "Emily," Daniel spoke her name softly, yet it resonated with the weight of 1,000 unspoken gestures. The reality of the moment struck like a cold gust, nudging the warmth of my earlier resolve toward uncertainty. I hadn't anticipated her presence, her subtle authority clashing with the fragile connection that still hung between us. "Who is she?" Emily demanded, stepping fully into the space, scrutinizing me with eyes that felt both incisive and accusing. "I'm just here to talk to Daniel," I stumbled, feeling the torrent of emotions swirl within me. "About everything." Daniel's expression shifted, panic flaring just as I gathered my courage, barely containing the tremors of emotion that pulsed through me. "Have you come to do an intervention?" Emily questioned, crossing her arms with a practiced disbelief. "Because it's not going to work, he's made his stop." Daniel interjected, his voice fierce yet vulnerable. "This isn't what I want." I stood stunned, watching as tension crackled in the air, unavoidable and raw. It dawned on me that Daniel's battles weren't just his alone, they were steeped in a complexity that ensnared those around him. His shoulders sagged as he leaned against the door frame, both universally human and heartbreakingly distant. "That I just want to help," I rushed, words tumbling from my mouth, desperate to weave a connection that could breach this expanding chasm. "I don't want you to feel alone in this." The weight of all our emotions simmered in the suffocating silence. Emily's arms slowly released their defensive stance as her eyes softened slightly, but she still hovered protectively around Daniel, as if afraid of the power our connection might yield. "Are you sure about this?" she asked, unexpectedly gentle, the question veiled under layers of concern. Yes, I declared, holding her gaze, willing her to see that I wasn't trying to replace anyone, just extending an open heart to a man who felt the world crushing him. Daniel, I turned to him, my heart thudding in my chest, tell her. Let her. But as I opened the door to an outpouring of emotions, the sudden buzz of Daniel's phone jolted the moment, a stark reminder of the reality looming over us all. He hesitated, glancing down as if the weight of it was too heavy to bear. Please, just let me in, I begged, stepping closer, drawing his gaze back to my own, desperately trying to breach the distance that seemed insurmountable. And then he made the choice that rattled my very foundation. I saw the flicker of hope rekindle in his eyes just before the phone buzzed again, revealing a name that shattered the fragile peace, Jordan. My heart dropped. I had heard that name mentioned in hushed tones, a ghost of bad news that loomed like a dark cloud overhead. The tension surged, twisting the atmosphere tighter. Daniel's expression shifted from uncertainty to a newfound fear, specific and penetrating. I have to, he said, voice trembling, and for a heartbeat, I feared that I was losing him once more. Daniel, don't. I reached for him, but he was already pulled into something else, phone clutched like an anchor, scrambling against the tide. In that moment, Emila's hand clasped tightly around his wrist, a tether to reality, as if it might keep him from drifting too far into a storm that threatened to consume us all. And when he took a deep breath, tension coiling tighter before he answered, I felt the ground shift beneath me once more, the world around us colliding in an uncertain spiral. I stood on the precipice, waiting breathlessly, heart racing, as the layers of his life began to peel away. Would I be standing with him when everything fell apart, or watching from the sidelines as he lost himself amidst the chaos? The stakes climbed higher, and the weight bore down as uncertainty loomed like dark clouds ready to drown us all in their fury. The phone seemed to reverberate through the room, the sound mingling with the echoes of unspoken words already suspended in the air. I watched Daniel's hand tighten around his phone as though it were a lifeline pulling him into a current he was desperate to understand. The concern etched into Emily's features mirrored my own. Daniel, I said, stepping forward, the words bubbling up in an urgent plea. You don't have to take that call. You don't have to face this alone. He looked up at me, eyes flickering between hope and the overwhelming weight of past choices. I promise I'll talk to you when I get back, he said, but there was a hesitation in his voice that sent an alarm bell ringing in my chest. Daniel, I began, but his gaze shifted to the phone once more. Just then, his thumb brushed across the screen, vulnerability spilling across his face in a way that made my heart ache. Emily, can you give us a minute? He asked quietly, his voice breaking, and for a moment, I wondered if this could be the opening I needed. Emily hesitated, but a flicker of understanding passed between them, leading her to release the grip she had on his wrist. She stepped aside, her protective nature temporarily folding, perhaps she sensed the urgency brewing within her son. But I could see the worry still clouding her eyes, a silent promise to check in again if this didn't go as Daniel hoped. As soon as she stepped out, the air distanced into an electric silence, vibrating with unsaid things. I moved closer, heart racing not just for him, but for the gravity of the situation that loomed ahead. You don't have to do this right now, Daniel. We can sit here in this moment until you're ready. The anguish on his face echoed louder than the phone ringing in the background. There was something I wanted to ask, something deep within me that screamed for clarity, but all I could manage was the yearning in my gaze, urging him silently to open up. There's so much at stake, he replied finally, his voice low but steady, as if he were trying to anchor himself amidst the whirlwind. Jordan, he's in trouble, and I can't just ignore it. Trouble? I echoed, curiosity and concern mingling hopelessly. What kind of trouble? He shook his head slightly, anguish tightening his features further, his fingers dancing nervously around the edge of the phone. I can't explain it now, but this is bigger than it looks. This isn't just about me. It's about everything I've built, everything I've tried to shield myself from. His eyes flickered, revealing cracks in the wall he'd constructed, and that vulnerability proved to be an open door I had been waiting for. Then let me help you, I pleaded again, this time stepping closer still. Don't face this alone, but he was already focused on the incoming call, the struggle palpable in the air. Finally, with a defeated sigh, he pressed the answer button, and I watched as a wave of emotion washed over him, twisting his features. Jordan, he said softly, but even in that single name, I could feel the weight of the world tethering him down. What's going on? I could hardly hear the other side of the conversation, but the tension in his posture told me everything I needed to know. His shoulders slumped under the expectation of problems unsolvable, my heart aching for both him and the unearthly burden that now rested on his shoulders. The tone of Daniel's voice shifted, pulling me into an emotional hurricane. Words like frantic, loss, and deadline pierced through the thick air. Each syllable felt like a dagger slicing through the reality I was desperately hoping to rebuild. As he spoke, I felt a choking fear rising in my chest. I wanted to reach out, to pull him back from whatever precipice held him captive, but the moment felt locked in a fragile yet fraught semblance of gravity. There was a pause, a heavy silence where time seemed to fracture, and I beheld a moment that clung tenderly between us. He looked up at me, a flicker of hope yet again attempting to reach for connection against the chaos building around him. In that instant, I saw the man I cared for drown beneath the weight of impending loss, haunted by a past that would never truly release its grasp. "Okay, it'll be there," he finally said, and my heart plummeted. The clarity of realization cut through me like a shard of glass. He'd do whatever it took to save Jordan, likely at the cost of everything we had begun to construct together. The call ended abruptly, and I felt his panic reverberate through a silence that rendered the world around us still. He put down the phone, face turned to the ground in an almost defeated acknowledgement that this matter was now pulling him from close proximity to me and back into his spiraling life. "Daniel, please." I reached for him, but he stepped back, as if my presence was too close to the truth he was scared to confront. "That I have to go," he said, the words raw with urgency. "I don't know what will happen, but no." The instinct to grasp him pulled tight at my chest. "You can't just. I don't have a choice," he burst out, anguish radiating from him, slicing through the dimly lit room. "This isn't just about us, Emily. There are things, people I have to protect them." My heart fractured under the weight of his desperation. In that moment, a chaotic storm brewed between us as uncertainty tautened in the silence. As he turned toward the door, I caught one last glimpse of the vulnerability in his eyes and saw a flicker of the man I had witnessed before fear swept him away. "Daniel, wait!" I called out, voice trembling, but he was already stepping back into a reality I could barely comprehend, where darkness lurked and choices gathered like shadows, threatening to drag him down. And just like that, everything fell apart. I was left standing there, feeling the heaviness of uncharted resolve around me, the promise of what we could be shrouded in impending despair. Would I have the power to reach him before it was too late, or would he slip through my fingers once more, lost among the things he felt obliged to face alone? The door closed behind him with a finality that echoed through the empty room, leaving me stranded in the aftermath of a storm I could neither control nor comprehend. I felt the chills settle around me, the silence heavy with unasked questions and unreciprocated promises. My emotions swung like a pendulum between anger and helplessness, fighting against the undeniable truth that faced us both. Our lives were spinning out of sync, pulled apart by forces beyond our control. I flopped onto the couch, sinking into the cushions as I tried to wrap my mind around the tangled web Daniel had woven. Who was Jordan? What kind of trouble had dragged my Daniel into a chaos he felt compelled to confront without me? I pressed my fingers to the bridge of my nose, trying to stave off the throbbing ache behind my eyes. In that moment, I felt the sharp pang of uncertainty twist deeper. I was losing him before we'd even begun to find our footing together. Suddenly, the stillness was disturbed by the sound of a door creaking open. I looked up to see Emily standing hesitantly at the threshold, her expression tinged with worry and something else. An unspoken camaraderie formed from shared heartache. She stepped in slowly, her movements deliberate, as if approaching a wounded creature. "Is he okay?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper, concern lacing every syllable. I shook my head, unable to muster a word. The truth was still lodged in my throat, heavy and painful. I thought of Daniel's face, strained and uncertain as he had stared down the barrel of his past, willing to sacrifice everything he had to save someone else. It was an act of unimaginable bravery, but it terrified me just the same. Emily moved closer and settled beside me, her presence a balm against my rising tide of despair. "I've known Daniel for a long time," she said, her tone soft yet resolute. "He doesn't let people in easily. I think he's been through more than he lets on." "Who is Jordan?" I blurted out. The name hung in the air like a ghost, as if it alone embodied the secrets that had driven a wedge between us. She took a moment, collecting her thoughts. "Jordan is someone from his past. A friend from a time when things were really different for him." Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears, mirroring my own turmoil. "He feels responsible for him in a way I can't fully explain." "Responsible?" I echoed. "For what?" Emily looked away, her gaze becoming distant as it wandered to the floor, where the sun cast golden beams through the window. "There was an incident a couple of years ago, an accident during that stage of his life. It changed everything. Daniel often talks about protecting those he loves, but I think he feels that it's his duty to save everyone, including those who made him feel less than just to get by." A heavy silence enveloped us, and the realization settled in that Daniel was grappling with guilt. Guilt for a life not fully lived, for decisions made in the name of love that weighed on his soul like a boulder. The walls of his fortress were built on scraps of promises and unhealed wounds. "That I can't just sit here," I said suddenly, the quiet resolve settling in my chest. "I need to help him. I can't let him face this alone." Emily nodded quietly, her eyes searching mine as if looking for assurances I barely possessed. "Then we have to figure out how to get to him. The last thing he needs is for this to pull him back into the darkness he's trying to escape." We spoke quietly, planning, strategizing how to reach Daniel and pull him back from the edge he seemed so ready to leap from. Yet, even with the hope of working together, my heart felt leaden. After what felt like endless minutes of talking about potential ways to reach Daniel or bring Jordan into the light, Emily's phone rang suddenly, slicing through the tension like a knife. Her face blanched as she picked it up. "It's him," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Daniel?" I asked, leaning closer. "No, Jordan," she replied, eyes wide. "He wants to talk to me." "Do not," I started, but already, her finger was swiping to answer, and I felt myself growing colder. At the revelation. The phone's call connected, and I could barely suppress the desperate urge to snatch it from her hand. "Jordan," Emily said, her tone shifting to one of concern. That I caught glimpses of her expression as she spoke, frantic, surprised, and fearful. The words that hung in the air eluded my comprehension, but then she gasped softly, a noise filled with shock. "Wait, what do you mean he didn't? That's not possible." Emily's voice rose, anxiety boiling over. "He can't just go without telling anyone. We have to help." I felt the walls close in around me as she hung up, eyes wide, shaken. He said Daniel hasn't responded to him, hasn't even tried to reach out the way he needs him to. And he fears what?" I pressed, dread flooding through me. Emily's voice trembled as she whispered, "He fears Daniel might take a direction he can't come back from." As the darkness of her words settled over us, the weight of a new fear seeped into my veins like poison. Somewhere, just on the horizon, the specter of loss loomed, ready to snatch everything away, leaving only the tender, aching void of unfulfilled love. The battle for Daniel's heart and spirit had only just begun, but I could feel the ticking clock sounding the alarm. What it meant to save him from his past now felt elusive and terrifying. And as I locked eyes with Emily, the truth sealed itself within me: we were running out of time. I sat in a haze, the remnants of Emily's conversation ricocheting around the empty space inside me. How could Daniel become so lost that his only option felt like surrender? I felt an icy wave of panic lapping at my feet, threatening to pull me under. I could see the framework of our plan so clearly now: we needed to reach him, by any means necessary. But how? The map of our lives had been drawn in scattered pieces, and I didn't know how to assemble them back into something coherent, something that made sense. "Should we go to him?" I finally said, my voice trembling as I turned to Emily, her hands nervously wringing together. "That I think we have to." "But what if he pushes us away?" She responded. "He might feel cornered, like we're trying to stop him from making his own choices." "That's exactly what we have to do," I stated, feeling a flicker of determination ignite within me. It's his life. But we can't just sit here. We need to show him that he's not alone in this, whether he wants us there or not. With a renewed sense of urgency, we hurriedly gathered our things, readying ourselves for the storm that awaited. The adrenaline coursing through my veins spurred me on, but just before stepping out of the door, I hesitated, a new thought seeping into my mind, that familiar curl of doubt coiling tight. "Emily!" I called, causing her to pause and turn back. What if I can't get through to him? What if in trying to help, I only push him further away? She stepped closer, placing a hand on my shoulder. "You won't know until you try. Just remember, Daniel is still the person you love. He's fighting, and love doesn't let fear win. You can reach him." With her words brushing against my heart like a soft caress, we stepped out into the cool evening air, the sky above painted in hues of indigo and orange, a stunning reminder of how beauty can coexist with struggle. The drive to Daniel's apartment felt interminable. Each second spent beside Emily in the car allowed my anxiety to swell, my mind replaying moments, smiles, laughter, the vulnerable glances we shared. I clung to those memories as if they were lifebuoys in a raging sea. When we arrived, apprehension weighed heavily on my chest like an anchor. I took a deep breath, the crisp night air filling my lungs, and moved toward the door. It felt heavy, each step drawing out the dread that had settled in me like a storm cloud. Emily stood beside me, strength radiating from her as she nodded, urging me silently to take the lead. That I raised my hand and knocked, the sound echoing like a call to battle. Moments passed, though they felt like hours, until I heard the shuffling of feet, and the door opened slightly, revealing Daniel. He looked different. The warmth in his eyes had flickered, dulled by shadows that loomed too close. "What are you doing here?" he asked, voice strained. There was a distance in his gaze, as if he were seeing someone from the past instead of the person who stood before him now. That I opened my mouth, but words failed me. I reached for him instead, my hand stretching out as if the mere act could bridge the chasm between us. "Daniel, please," I said, my voice breaking. "We're worried about you." He paused, his expression hardening for a moment before the flicker of vulnerability crossed his face. "I'm fine," he lied, the tremor in his voice betraying him. "Fine." Emily interjected, stepping forward, her warmth wrapping around his cold demeanor like a shield. "You don't look fine. And you don't have to bear this on your own. We're here for you." The door creaked further open, and Daniel stood frozen, caught between the desire to retreat into his protective shell and the longing for connection, for solace. I could see the storm swirling within him, a fierce battle of pride and desperation. "Jordan is in trouble, and I need to help him," he finally confessed, his voice barely a whisper, weighted with the burden of his choices. "I can't let him down, not when he's counting on me. Is it worth risking your life for him?" I asked softly, drawing closer. "What about you? What do you need?" His eyes filled with pain, and I saw clearly now the scars that bound him. He was still grappling with an unresolved guilt that had stuck to him like a shadow. I don't know what I need," he finally admitted, his voice breaking. Just then, the moment shattered. A phone buzzed loudly in the silence, breaking the tension in a jarring way. Daniel's gaze darted to his pocket, his eyes widening. "I need to take this," he muttered. I shook my head, fear radiating from me like radiation from a storm. "Daniel, please don't go." But he had already turned away, the battle inside him almost palpable. The door swung fully open, and the light from within cast a harsh contrast against the murky dusk. That he answered the call, and I could barely make out the voice on the other end, but the sudden change in his demeanor was evident. I exchanged worried glances with Emily. We could see the realization hitting him, and just as suddenly, anguish spread across his face. "Wait, you can't know." His voice, once filled with strength, now trembled. He covered the phone and faced us, horror etched upon his features. "It's Jordan. Hesha's made a choice. He might not come back from it." I felt the world tilt, the very foundations of my resolve crumbling. The truth crashed over us like waves in a storm. Daniel wasn't just afraid for Jordan's life, he was grappling with the reality that he might lose more than just a friend. The love and soul he was willing to sacrifice hung in the balance, teetering on the precipice of irrevocable loss, and in that moment, it felt like we were all trapped in the undertow together, pulled deeper into the chaos. As his voice trembled, filled with raw emotion, it became painfully clear, we might not have enough time to save either of them. The chill of the evening air seeped into my bones, but the fear trying to consume me was far colder. Daniel's expression twisted in anguish, raw and unguarded. I watched his hands shake as he cradled the phone, his knuckles whitening. I dared to imagine the words echoing in the silence between us, each syllable a heavy weight nobody knew how to lift. "Daniel, we need to focus," I urged, my heart racing. "What did he say? What do we need to do?" He dropped his gaze to the floor as if the ground might provide answers that eluded him. He's gone. He's planning something reckless. He thinks it's the only way to prove himself. He believes he has no other choice. Each word felt like wind against flames, stirring something deeper. "Then we have to do something," I cried out, desperation clawing at my throat. "We can't let him go through with it. You need to get him to stop." "I've tried, but he won't listen to anyone," Daniel said, and the pain in his voice cut through my heart. "He thinks he needs to save himself." Emily stepped closer, her eyes softening as she studied him, searching for the flicker of hope to ignite. "But you can't give up on him. You don't have to shoulder this burden alone. Not with us here." Footsteps thundered behind us, tearing me from the swirling vortex of Daniel's struggles. A wild-eyed figure emerged into the light, and I recognized him at once, Alex, Daniel's brother, breathing heavily as if he had sprinted all the way. "Did I miss something?" he asked, glancing between us, worry twisting his features. Dread simmered just beneath the surface. "Jordan's in trouble," I explained, urgency spurring my words. "He needs us to help him. Daniel needs to track him down before it's too late." Alex's expression shifted. "Fine. We're going. Where do we start?" "Wherever he is," Daniel said, determination finally breaking through the layers that had held him hostage. "He might be at the old warehouse by the docks. It's where he used to hang out." The urgency in Daniel's voice ignited furious hope within me. "Let's go," I urged, already spinning on my heel. But as I moved to take a step, I caught Daniel's eyes, and for a fleeting moment, I glimpsed his fear. It twisted my heart. Would he be able to let go of the past, off the guilt binding him to save his friend? Or was the weight of sacrifice too great? As we hurried to the car, the adrenaline surged through me, drowning out the panic. I squeezed Daniel's hand, a gesture of grounding amidst the chaos swirling around us. "We'll figure this out together," I promised, my voice steady even as my heart raced. The car jolted to life, careening down the streets lined with flickering street lamps and shadows of trees clawing at the sky. Emily pressed her knee against mine, her silent support bolstering a fragile resolve. We were no longer facing this ordeal as individuals, we had become a team imbued with purpose, urged forward by the promise of hope, but even in the whirlwind of determination, uncertainty loomed large. I watched Daniel's fingers grip the dashboard, his knuckles pale, each bump in the road mirroring his internal upheaval. "What if I can't get to him in time?" he whispered, more to himself than to us. "You have to try," I insisted fiercely. "Do it for him, and do it for yourself." The harsh lights of the warehouse blurred into focus as we approached, the looming structure casting a long shadow that overtook the street like a dark omen. Anxiety pulsed through me as we parked, hearts drumming as we climbed out and darted toward the entrance. An overwhelming sense of dread filled the air, every step echoing louder than gunfire in the stillness. Daniel paused, gripping the doorframe, breathing heavily. "What if it's too late?" he asked, his voice a ragged whisper tainted with guilt. As if the universe itself reveled in our torturous anxiety, a sudden loud crash came from within the warehouse, snapping Daniel from his reverie. "Daniel!" Emily shouted urgently, and without waiting for another moment, we surged forward into the darkness, uncertainty mingling with determination. The inside was dim, lit only by sporadic flickers of fluorescent lights. Every corner held the potential for danger, but we pressed on, guided by the instinct we didn't even know we had until this very moment. "Jordan. Daniel shouted into the void. "Where are you?" A low murmur drifted from deeper within, and I instinctively grabbed Daniel's wrist, grounding him as his face transformed, shadowed with worry. The seconds stretched taut, each heartbeat pounding in my ears that we moved further inside until we stumbled upon a small, dimly lit room where Jordan sat, shadows painting his features with despair. He looked up, surprise and fear flashing across his face, but before I could speak, a horrifying revelation gripped my heart that he was holding something in his hand, something I only recognized once the light caught it, a small glimmering object that reflected a haunting truth. "Jordan, no." Daniel's voice broke, and in that moment, as all our hopes seemed to spiral downward, I felt another wave of dread crash over me. Now, standing on the precipice of loss and desperation, we were too late, faced not just with saving a friend but with the possibility of losing everything we ever held dear. The silence that followed was deafening, a weight that threatened to suffocate us all. The stillness after Daniel's desperate shout echoed around us, wrapping the tiny room in a blanket of tension so thick I thought I might choke. I moved closer, my heart hammering against my ribs as I took in the sight of Jordan hunched alone, the glimmering object in his hand now a harbinger of what could unravel everything. "Jordan, please put that down," Daniel pleaded, his voice trembling as he took a cautious step forward. Jordan looked up, his eyes swimming with confusion and an array of emotions that felt too heavy to bear: fear, anger, despair. "You don't understand," he croaked, his voice barely above a whisper. "This is the only way to be free." "Free?" Emily echoed incredulously, stepping beside Daniel. "This isn't freedom. This is a death sentence." But Jordan's gaze slid over her, unfocused, lost. "You can't save me," he said bitterly, lifting the object slightly, light glinting off its Surfacia pocket knife, simple yet ominous. "You don't know what it feels like. I'm done fighting." My breath hitched, a cold wave washing over me. I thought of all the late-night talks we'd shared, the laughter, the dreams, the plans for the future, and felt as if they were slipping through my fingers like grains of sand, so easy to lose. "Jordan," I implored softly, inching closer despite the tension that crackled in the air. "We can fight this together. You're not alone." Suddenly, his eyes flared with anger, the fragile control he had crumbling like brittle leaves in autumn. "You don't get it. No one understands." "We do," Daniel interjected fiercely, stepping forward, determination etched into his features. "We want to help you. Do you think I want to stand here and watch you do this? I've been where you are, lost, broken, and scared. But this isn't the answer." He shifted between fury and desperation as he worked to connect with his brother. "You remember when we were kids? How we used to dream about being superheroes? We just wanted to escape, and you told me we could. Together." Jordan flinched, the grip on the knife faltering for a moment. "That feels like ages ago," he muttered, tears threatening to spill. "We can be those superheroes again," Daniel pressed, his voice now laced with raw emotion. "It's not too late for any of us." The hope in Daniel's voice reached out like a lifeline in a turbulent ocean, yet Jordan remained tangled in his internal storm. He looked down at the knife once more, a weight on his chest visible in the way his shoulders slumped. "You don't really understand. You're out there living, caring about the world. I'm the one left behind." "Don't say that," I urged, desperate to cut through the despair binding him. "Your life matters. We care, and we're here." Jordan's gaze flickered to mine, perhaps sensing the sincerity buried in my words. I stepped forward, seeking connection. None of us is meant to face this alone. We've all experienced loss, and it's okay to feel empty. But don't you dare think about giving up. Suddenly, a sharp sound echoed from the entrance, footsteps that thudded against the concrete floor, drawing our attention away from Jordan. My stomach sank as a dark figure appeared in the light trickling through the doorway, a smirk cutting across his face. "Is this a family reunion?" He leaned casually against the doorframe, a threatening presence that shifted the atmosphere in the room. It was a face I knew all too well, a face that created many of our unspoken fears. Kyle, a former associate of Jordan, smirked with all the charm of a snake waiting to strike. "What are you doing here?" Daniel growled, instinctively positioning himself protectively in front of Jordan and me. "I heard my old friend needed some help," Kyle said, his tone dripping with insincerity. "Or should I say, dramatic flair. I'm just here to see how everything plays out." Jordan's eyes widened as he turned back to the pocket knife, wavering, vulnerability colliding with rage at being exposed. "Get out!" he shouted, the fear finally breaking through the turmoil inside him. Kyle chuckled, moving further into the room and glancing toward the knife. "You're truly serious about this, aren't you? Thought you'd hit rock bottom, but look at you now." In that moment, the world around us faded, and it felt as if there were only us left, trapped in this space where hope and despair collided. "Jordan, this isn't the way," Daniel urged, but as he spoke, the shadows of the past lingered, a weight upon our souls, haunting and relentless. Before I could utter another word, Kyle lunged toward Jordan, and I felt a surge of frozen horror as time slowed. "No!" I screamed, adrenaline coursing through me, but it was too late. The knife clattered to the floor, its gleam snuffed out as uncertainty brewed heavier than ever. In that fragile moment, I realized we might not just lose Jordan and might lose each other. As fear crystallized in the air, we stood at a crossroads, and every heartbeat felt like a countdown to the shattering of our lives. Would we stand united, or would the darkness pull us into an abyss from which we could never return? The chaos erupted like a storm, and time folded in on itself. I barely registered the clatter of the knife as it hit the concrete, echoing through the small room filled with charged emotions, the moment frozen in the stark reality of our interconnected fates. Jordan's eyes flickered between anger and despair, every ounce of anguish etched on his face. "Don't come any closer," Daniel warned, stepping protectively between Jordan and Kyle, his voice steady despite the tremors running through him. The air thickened, a taut string ready to snap. "Why not?" Kyle sneered, a predatory glint dancing in his eyes. "Because you think you can save him? He's already lost." He laughed, a sound that sliced through the tension like a knife, mocking our desperation. "Stop!" I shouted, pushing forward, my heart hammering wildly in my chest. "You don't know anything about him. You don't get to determine what's lost or what's saved." For a moment, everything vanished into silence, each side pausing, suspended in a delicate thread of unspoken fear. I reached for Jordan, desperate to breach the wall surrounding him. "Jordan, talk to me. You may feel hopeless now, but look at the people who care about you." "We're here, Jordan," Daniel echoed, his voice tender, yet firm. "We don't have to lose you. We've all struggled. Let us help you. Let us fight together." Between the threat of Kyle and the depth of despair within the room, I could feel the fragile balance tilt dangerously. Just as Jordan's eyes flickered with uncertainty, a whirlwind of emotion erupted from deep within him. "You don't understand," he cried, breaking the silence. "I'm tired of fighting. I don't want to do this anymore. I just want it to end." Those words hit me like a punch, a terrible revelation of the depths of his pain. I realized in that moment the shadows of his past intertwined with mine, inseparable yet both suffocating. "Please, don't give up," I pleaded, my voice filled with raw urgency. "You're stronger than you think. All you need is a hand to guide you back. Let us be the light when everything feels dark." Jordan trembled, his gaze darting between us, the shadows of hope and despair warring inside him. His fingers brushed the floor, shaking, inching closer to the knife once again. "You don't know how hard it's been," he shouted, fists clenching. "No, we don't know everything," Daniel countered, voice steady but quaking as he stepped toward him. "But we want to. No one should face this battle alone. Let us into your fight because we want to be your allies, not your enemies." As the tide of emotion swelled, Kyle's smirk faltered. "Look at you. You're nothing but a broken shell." He spat at Jordan, trying to regain control. "You think they care? They don't. You're wasting their time. Please, don't let him do this to you," I interjected, feeling the heartbreak rise as I reached for Jordan, my own fears bubbling to the surface. Fight against him. Fight for yourself. You're worthy of love, you don't need to live in the shadows. Jordan's breath hitched as he squeezed his eyes shut, a conflicted storm raging within him. It was then that I caught his gaze. In that brief moment, vulnerability flickered softly beneath the anger. For the first time, I saw a glimpse of the boy from 2 years ago, the dreamer who had once whispered wishes on fallen stars. I can't, he muttered, voice breaking like glass, yet the softness around it felt achingly hopeful. I can't go back to that. I can't face the pain. You can't move forward without facing it either, Daniel urged gently, desperation threading through his words. You have brothers here, Jordan. You have a fight worth surviving. You deserve every chance at happiness. Suddenly, Jordan's hand that held the knife slid away, dropping it to the concrete where it clattered, echoing louder than any of our pleas. Hope surged as we stepped closer, bridging the distance filled with sorrow, ready to reach for him. Kyle growled in frustration, sensing his control slipping away, desperate to regain the upper hand. You bloodsuckers will only drag him down. He's better off without you, no. I shouted, the pure intensity of the moment urgent and alive. He's not alone. Not anymore. Look beyond the darkness, Jordan. I took another step closer, feeling the warmth of Daniel's presence beside me, anchoring us together. Let us help you. Let us show you that the fight for tomorrow is worth it. Jordan hesitated, and I took a leap of faith. I extended my arms, holding my breath as I offered a lifeline. Let us in. Just trust us, trust the love that binds us together. No one has to be alone in this. As our words hovered in the electric air, Jordan slowly lifted his gaze, uncertain yet yearning. But what if I fall again? The whisper shook his voice, and my heart plummeted. Then we'll catch you, Daniel said fiercely, stepping forward, a unity of strength that rippled through the air. We'll always catch you. That's what family is for. In that moment, with everything colliding, fear, hope, love, and desperation, all it took was his choice. Jordan blinked, tears spilling down his cheeks as he hesitated only a heartbeat longer. Then, like a flame igniting from a flicker, I saw the barrier within him shatter, and he dropped to his knees. I'm sorry, he cried, face contorted in grief as he surrendered. I don't want to be lost anymore. Neither do we, I breathed, rushing forward to envelop him in my arms, feeling that pent-up rage and love intermingled as I wrapped around him protectively. Daniel knelt beside us, arms stretching out to gather him close as the three of us huddled in a tender embrace, and I suddenly felt the weight of fears lift, replaced by the warmth of understanding. We'll fight this together, Daniel promised. Always. Kyle snarled, his irritation palpable, but he realized the solidarity that had formed was stronger than his empty threats. You think this changes anything? He growled, and the shadows began to shift, darkness retreating in the face of unity. I felt Jordan's body trembling against mine, clinging tightly to the resolve we had forged as a band of warriors against his shadows. You're never alone, I assured him in that cocoon of warmth. Not anymore. And as that bond enveloped us, illuminating the darkness, we stood strong as one family against the weight of grief, inextricably woven together by the power of love. With that, I understood the truth: the fiercest battles often lie not in the hands of those who are entangled but in the moments of resilience, where forgiving oneself can spark the fire that builds anew. As I turned to face the man who brought us together, our eyes locked with unyielding resolve, I felt the world shift with the promise that we would emerge from the darkness intact, and together, as one heartbeat, we took a step forward, chasing the light of tomorrow, a dawn blooming beautifully upon the horizon, comfortable in the knowing that as long as we fought together, we would never truly be lost.